On a stormy night, a young billionaire encounters a girl standing at the gates of his mansion, drenched and trembling from the downpour. Her eyes, wide and filled with a strange sense of determination, meet his as she apologizes. "Sorry, Dad, I'm late." Noah's entire world shifts in an instant, as what happens next will alter the course of his life forever. The storm outside pounded against the windows of the Hayes mansion like an angry beast, its deafening roar competing with the silence within. Noah sat in his grand office on the first floor, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen before him. Spreadsheets, financial graphs, projections, it was all he knew. The numbers bled into one another, a quiet symphony of data. It was 10 p.m. on a Friday night, yet the mansion's darkened hallways remained void of any sound, save for the occasional crackle of the storm outside. His staff had long since retreated to their quarters or left for the evening. Noah preferred it that way. Peaceful. Uninterrupted. The flashing of lightning outside briefly lit up the meticulously maintained garden, casting long shadows on the floor. The thunder rumbled like the growl of a distant animal, causing the house to quiver ever so slightly. One more hour and he would wrap up for the night, he muttered to himself, adjusting his reading glasses as his gaze returned to the screen. At the age of 38, Noah was a man who seemed to have it all. He commanded one of the largest tech companies in the country and had amassed a fortune that many could only dream of. Power. Wealth. Respect. Everything society deemed important was at his fingertips. And yet, in the solitude of his mansion, surrounded by rooms that went unused and halls that echoed with emptiness, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that he had something fundamental missing. His social calendar was packed with endless meetings and corporate events, but there was no one with whom he shared his evenings. As Noah began reviewing the last report of the night, a soft but persistent knock echoed through the mansion. The sound was almost drowned out by the storm's fury, yet it stood out, like a whisper in the middle of chaos. Who could be at the door at this hour? Noah's brow furrowed in confusion. He wasn't expecting anyone, and certainly not in the middle of a storm like this. The intercom system hadn't buzzed, which meant whoever was knocking had somehow bypassed the security at the main gate without any notice. A possibility crossed his mind, perhaps it was some emergency involving a staff member. The knock came again, more insistent this time, shattering the stillness. Grumbling to himself, Noah stood up from his desk and crossed the entrance hall, annoyance creeping into his step. He was never one for surprises, especially late at night. He flicked on the exterior light, opened the door, and was immediately confronted by a sight that left him speechless. A small girl, probably no older than 5, stood at the threshold, soaking wet, her hair plastered to her face. Clutched tightly against her chest was a drenched backpack, its contents undoubtedly ruined. She trembled in the cold, but her wide brown eyes, though tired and filled with exhaustion, had an odd spark of something. Was it courage? That made Noah pause. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice laced with confusion. A lost child at his door wasn't exactly what he expected. The girl swallowed hard, her teeth chattering as she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "You're Noah Hayes, right?" she asked. "I'm Emily." She hesitated, as if summoning every ounce of bravery she had before continuing. "You're my dad." Noah felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted suddenly, making him dizzy. The words hit him like a physical blow to the chest. The logical part of his mind screamed that this was a mistake, a joke, or some elaborate scam. His instincts told him to shut the door, lock the house up, and forget this entire encounter. But something, a nagging feeling he couldn't explain, kept him rooted to the spot. He cleared his throat, forcing his voice to remain calm. "I think you're mistaken," he said, though his eyes were fixed on her fragile form standing before him, soaked and shivering. "I'm not your father." But the girl, Emily, didn't back down. "Mom said you wouldn't know about me," she continued, her voice small but steady. "She told me if anything happened to her, I should come find you." Noah's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what she was saying. Where was this child's mother? The storm outside seemed to intensify, and Emily shrank back a little at the loud boom of thunder. "Where's your mother?" Noah asked, trying to steady his voice. Emily's eyes dropped to the ground, and she wiped her nose on the sleeve of her soaked jacket. "I don't know," she replied softly. "We were at the store near the hotel, and I got separated from her. I waited, but she didn't come back. She always told me to come here if we got separated." Noah looked out at the storm again. The rain was now pouring in sheets, and the winds howled like wild animals. He couldn't in good conscience send this girl away, not in this weather, not in this state. "How did you get here?" he asked, his voice softening despite his inner turmoil. "By taxi," Emily said. "Mom taught me your address and told me to memorize it, just in case." Noah's eyes widened, and Emily pulled a crumpled, soaked wad of bills from her jacket pocket. "I used the emergency money," she explained. He stood frozen for a moment, torn between the cold, calculating side of him that told him to call the authorities and the human side that couldn't abandon this child. The door to his pristine life was suddenly opening to something, or someone, he couldn't explain. "Come inside," Noah said, his voice quieter now, filled with a strange mix of uncertainty and compassion. He stepped aside, opening the door wider. "We'll figure this out." Emily took a small, uncertain step inside, leaving puddles behind as she crossed the threshold. Her small figure seemed even smaller against the grandness of the mansion. "What's your mom's full name?" Noah asked as he closed the door behind her. "Claire Donovan," Emily answered without hesitation. The name meant nothing to Noah. He couldn't recall anyone by that name, and yet the girl standing before him was so sure. Her presence, so fragile yet unwavering, unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Noah's thoughts raced as he led Emily upstairs. She needed a warm bath and dry clothes, and he had no idea what to make of the situation. He gave her a plain white t-shirt to wear as a nightgown and directed her to the bathroom. "Take a hot bath," he said gently. "We'll sort this out later. Just get warm." As he left, Noah considered calling the police. But the name Claire Donovan lingered in his mind. He couldn't shake it. Was this really his daughter? If so, how had this been kept from him for so long? In the kitchen, he prepared a simple meal, his thoughts clouded with a mixture of doubt and intrigue. 15 minutes later, Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hair still damp but her demeanor less fearful than before. "Take a seat," Noah said, motioning to the table. As she sat down, he realized that no matter how complicated this situation became, there was no turning back now. The girl before him was his responsibility for the moment, and that meant he had to face the truth, no matter how absurd it seemed. Noah motioned toward one of the high stools at the kitchen counter. Emily hesitated for a moment before climbing up, struggling slightly as her bare feet dangled in the air, unable to touch the footrest. He placed a plate with a sandwich and a bowl of soup in front of her, watching as she immediately began eating, her hunger unmistakable. "How did you know where to find me?" he asked, trying to break the tension. Emily paused between bites, her small hands shaking slightly as she answered. "Mom always knew where you lived," she said, her voice tinged with familiarity. "She said it was important that I know, just in case I ever needed you." Noah leaned forward, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "And why would you need me?" he asked, his voice softer now. Emily, engrossed in the food, didn't meet his gaze at first. "Because you're my dad," she replied simply. "That's what Mom said." A deep sigh escaped Noah as he tried to remain composed. "Emily, I don't know your mother," he said cautiously. "I think there's some sort of misunderstanding here." Emily stopped eating, her gaze lifting to meet his. "She said you'd say that," she responded. Noah felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What else did she say?" he pressed, his voice now edged with a mix of frustration and confusion. Emily took another spoonful of soup, her face serious despite her young age. "She said you wouldn't remember her, that it was a long time ago. But if she couldn't take care of me, you would." Because deep down, you're a good man. The words hit Noah harder than he expected. A good man, he repeated softly, the phrase echoing in his mind. It had been a long time since anyone had described him that way, and he wasn't sure if he liked how it made him feel. He exhaled slowly, keeping his voice even. "I'll call the police in the morning," he said, forcing a calmness into his tone. "They'll know how to find your mother." Emily didn't argue. She simply nodded, her eyes focused on her empty plate as she finished the last bit of soup. She looked utterly exhausted. Noah's instinct was to call the authorities immediately, but something in him held back. Instead, he offered, "Where do you and your mom live?" He wanted to understand more, wanted to piece together this strange puzzle. Emily shrugged, her voice softer than before. "We move a lot. We were staying at a hotel near here this week, and before that, we were in Seattle. And before that, Denver." Noah let out a frustrated sigh, realizing this line of questioning was going nowhere. The girl was far too tired to make sense of everything he was asking. She was drifting off. "I'm done," Emily muttered, pushing her empty plate aside. "Thank you for the food." Noah stood, taking the dishes to the sink, but he wasn't ready to let this go. "Come on," he said, his voice gentler now. "Let's go to the guest room. We'll figure all this out tomorrow." As they walked back down the long hallway, Noah noticed how Emily carefully examined every corner of the house, eyes lingering on the paintings hanging on the walls, the grand sculptures in the niches, the sheer scale of the rooms. It was as though she was taking mental notes of every detail, like she was cataloging a world she'd never known. Noah opened the door to the guest room, stepping aside for Emily to enter. "Everything you need is in the bathroom," he said. "If you need anything during the night, my room is the last one down the hall, to the right." Emily climbed onto the large bed, the vastness of the room making her look small and fragile. She settled into the soft pillows, clearly exhausted. "Will Mom find me?" she asked quietly, the first real sign of vulnerability he had seen from her since her arrival. "We'll find her," Noah answered, his voice neutral. "Just rest, now." He was about to turn to leave when Emily's quiet voice stopped him. "She said you were a good man." Noah froze, his hand on the doorknob. He didn't respond, but the words lingered in the air, unsettling him more than he cared to admit. "She said you forgot who you really were," Emily added softly, almost as a whisper. An inexplicable chill ran down Noah's spine. He turned toward her to say something, but Emily had already curled up under the blankets, her eyes closed in peaceful slumber. He turned off the light, leaving only the bedside lamp on, and quietly closed the door behind him. In the hallway, he paused for a moment, leaning against the wall, suddenly breathless. Forgot who he really was. The words echoed in his mind as he made his way back to his office. The storm still raged outside, but now, it wasn't just the weather that was unsettling. The sense of losing control over his own life, his own past, was growing stronger by the minute. Noah sat back down at his desk, but the financial reports that once demanded his full attention no longer seemed important. His mind was consumed by one thing, Claire Donovan. He opened a new browser window and typed the name that had become a haunting presence in his thoughts. The search had only just begun, and with it, Noah's life was about to take a turn he had never expected. 3 days had passed since Emily's arrival, and Noah had kept a calculated distance. Even after discovering that the hotel Emily mentioned did indeed exist, and that a woman named Claire Donovan had checked in with a child but mysteriously vanished on the exact date Emily had described, the police had opened an investigation. Yet, nothing concrete had emerged. Emily had stayed in the mansion, growing more comfortable with each passing day. She seemed to settle in as if she belonged there, as though this place was home for her, even though it wasn't truly hers. Noah, frustrated by the lack of answers, sat across from his lawyer, Diane Wells. "We need to clear this up once and for all," he said firmly. "I want a DNA test as soon as possible." Diane adjusted her glasses, her expression cool and measured as always. I can arrange it for later today, she said, already reaching for her phone. I know a lab that can prioritize the case. We'll have preliminary results in 48 hours. Great, Noah replied, tapping his fingers on the desk. What about temporary custody? Diane thought for a moment. Technically, you're already exercising de facto custody. If the test confirms paternity, you'll have legal rights. If it doesn't? Noah leaned forward, his voice hardening. Then we'll find out who's behind this and what they really want. After Diane left, Noah went upstairs to check on Emily. He found her sitting on the bed, drawing in a notepad the housekeeper had given her. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. She looked up at his voice. We need to do a test, he said, his tone serious. What kind of test? She asked, genuinely curious, without a trace of worry in her expression. A DNA test. Do you know what that is? Emily nodded. It's when they check if two people are in the same family. Like father and daughter, she said, smiling slightly. Mom explained that you might want that someday. Her confidence unnerved Noah. It was as if Claire Donovan had prepared Emily for everything, for every question, for every reaction. So, you don't mind? Noah asked, his voice tight. No, Emily answered simply, turning back to her drawing. I know you're my dad. Noah's frustration mixed with a sense of discomfort he couldn't quite explain. Why was this child so certain? And why did it make him feel so trapped? 2 hours later, a nurse from the lab Diane had recommended arrived at the mansion. The procedure was quick, just a saliva sample from both Noah and Emily. Emily was completely unfazed, while Noah's anxiety was palpable. How long until we get the results? Noah asked, unable to hide the tension in his voice. We're prioritizing your case, Mr. Hayes, the nurse said, offering a reassuring smile. 48 hours at most. Those 48 hours felt like an eternity. Noah tried to focus on work, but his mind always drifted back to Emily, back to the name that refused to leave his thoughts, Claire Donovan. And the unsettling feeling that he was losing control of the narrative of his own life. On the second morning, Noah found Emily in the kitchen, helping the housekeeper make pancakes. Good morning, she said cheerfully, as though she had lived in the house for years. Want blueberry pancakes? She asked, her smile wide. Noah declined, taking a cup of coffee instead. He couldn't help but watch how at ease she seemed in a house that had never truly felt like home, not even for him. Then, the phone call came, the one he had both hoped for and feared. Mr. Hayes. The voice on the other end was formal. We have the preliminary results of the paternity test. Noah's throat went dry as he prepared himself for the answer he already feared. The probability of paternity is greater than 99.9%. The phone call left Noah in a state of disbelief. There's no doubt the girl is your biological daughter, the doctor's words echoed in his mind, but they didn't feel real. The gravity of the statement hung in the air as he tried to process the fact that he had a daughter, one he couldn't even remember having. A 99.9% certainty. The number felt like a punch to the gut. How could this be possible? How could he have a daughter, and yet have no recollection of her mother? The question swirled in his head as his thoughts spiraled out of control. Mr. Hayes, are you there? The doctor's voice snapped him out of his stupor. Yes, Noah muttered, his voice distant. Thank you for the result. Please send the full report to my email. He hung up, but remained frozen in place for several minutes, his gaze fixed on the blank wall in front of him. Everything seemed to slow down, but his mind couldn't keep up with the new reality unfolding around him. He needed to talk to Emily. She had to know what was going on. He made his way down to the living room, where Emily was sitting on the floor, eyes glued to the cartoon on the TV. The moment she sensed his presence, she stopped, her small face reading his shock instantly. They called, didn't they? She asked, her voice calm and almost knowing. Noah nodded slowly, still at a loss for words. Emily smiled, but not triumphantly. It was more of a relieved, almost bittersweet smile. I knew it, she said quietly, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. How? The question escaped his lips almost like an accusation. How did you know if I didn't even know? How can I have a daughter and not remember? Emily's expression shifted then, a subtle maturity overtaking her young face. Mom said you wouldn't remember. She said it was complicated. Complicated? Noah laughed, though the sound was hollow, tinged with disbelief. Having a daughter and forgetting about her is more than complicated, Emily. It's impossible. Emily turned off the TV, her attention fully on him now. Mom doesn't like talking about the past, she said, her voice steady. But she showed me pictures of you. She told me stories. What stories? Noah asked, his curiosity piqued. She said you met when she worked at a coffee shop near your office, Emily began, her words coming out like a recitation, but her voice was full of emotion. You used to laugh more back then. She paused and looked up at Noah. She said something happened that separated you, and after that, you forgot about her. Noah felt his heart rate quicken. A coffee shop, Claire working as a waitress, but nothing in his mind clicked. No memory stirred. I don't, he said, his voice faltering. I don't remember, Emily. The little girl surprised him then by placing her small hand over his. That's okay, she said softly. Mum said it wasn't your fault. The words hit him harder than he expected. Not my fault, he repeated under his breath. What had Claire told her? What else had she said? When we find your mom, I'll have a lot of questions for her, Noah said, more to himself than to Emily. Emily, without missing a beat, nodded. She'll answer. She always said the truth was important, even when it hurts. Noah stood up, needing to step away to process everything that was unfolding around him. In the span of 3 days, his meticulously controlled life had been upended, transformed into a puzzle he couldn't solve. And the worst part? The DNA test results confirmed that Emily was indeed his daughter. But how had he forgotten? Can I call you Dad now? Emily's voice broke through his thoughts, catching him off guard. Noah turned back to her, studying the small child who had his eyes, who shared his blood, and in some strange way, was part of him. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Let's take it slow, he said, his voice softer than he intended. We have a lot to figure out first. The truth was undeniable, though. The DNA test had confirmed it. Noah Hayes was a father. But how he became one, and how he had forgotten, was a mystery he wasn't sure he wanted to unravel. Less than 24 hours after receiving the test results, Noah's search for answers had escalated into a full-scale operation. The Hayes mansion, usually a place of solitude and silence, was now alive with activity. Security personnel, private investigators, and lawyers moved throughout the house, all working on different parts of the mystery. I want all the security camera footage from the grocery store where Emily says she got separated from her mother, Noah instructed Marcus Brent, the head of security he'd hired years ago for sensitive corporate matters. Also, get footage from the surrounding streets, other nearby stores, everything. Marcus, a no-nonsense ex-military man, nodded. We've already requested the footage. We're reconstructing her movements from the 48 hours before she disappeared. Across the makeshift conference table in Noah's office, Diane Wells, his lawyer, was flipping through files with a frown on her face. What's strange is that I can't find many records for Claire Donovan, she said, her tone filled with concern. No significant bank accounts, few lease agreements. Everything looks temporary. It's like she was hiding. Hiding? Noah repeated, his mind racing. Hiding from whom? Or what? Marcus hesitated before answering. Some people prefer living off the radar. Sometimes it's because of debts or legal troubles, he paused, his expression hardening, or because they're afraid of someone. The implications hung in the air, thick and heavy with uncertainty. If Claire had been hiding from something or someone, why had she sent Emily specifically to him? Why now, after all these years? A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Hayes. Sarah, the housekeeper, peeked inside. Emily is asking if she can have lunch. Noah glanced at the clock, surprised at how much time had passed. It's almost 2 o'clock, he muttered. Take a break, he told the team. We'll resume in an hour. He walked upstairs, his mind still swirling with questions. This was his new reality. There was no ignoring the fact that a 5-year-old child was now in his care, depending on him for everything. He couldn't just bury himself in work and meetings anymore. When Noah arrived in the kitchen, he found Emily sitting on the counter, her legs swinging out of reach of the floor as she colored in a book. Look, I made a green dinosaur, she said, holding up the page proudly. Very nice, Noah said, surprised by the warmth in his own voice. Sorry I kept you waiting. Emily shrugged and returned to her drawing. Sarah helped me. She doesn't color outside the lines. The housekeeper smiled as she prepared sandwiches. Noah watched as Emily effortlessly formed a bond with Sarah in just a few days, making herself at home while Claire remained an enigma. Can we eat outside? Emily suddenly asked, pointing toward the window. It's sunny. Noah hesitated. He usually ate lunch alone in his office, barely noticing the garden outside. But now, something about the request felt different. Why not, he answered, surprising even himself. Minutes later, they sat at a table on the back patio, the sunlight filtering through the branches of an old oak tree. The air was fresh, and everything seemed to carry a sense of renewal, as if nature itself was giving them a fresh start. As Emily took bites of her sandwich, cut into neat triangles, just the way she liked, Noah began to ask more about her life. Can you tell me more about you and your mom? Where have you lived? He asked. Emily chewed thoughtfully, crumbs falling from her plate. We've lived in a lot of houses. Sometimes in hotels too, she said, her tone matter of fact. You moved a lot? Noah asked. Yeah, Emily nodded enthusiastically. Mom says we're explorers. Do you know why you move so often? Noah asked, keeping the conversation light. Emily shrugged, her expression as simple as only a 5-year-old's could be. Mom says it's for work, but she always looks back when we leave, like she forgot something. Noah exchanged a glance with Marcus, who was discreetly observing from near the patio door. The security chief gave a slight nod, silently taking note of what Emily had just said. What does your mom do? What kind of work? Noah asked, his curiosity growing. Emily's eyes lit up as she took a big bite of her sandwich. She talks to people on the computer, she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. Sometimes she uses funny words. I don't understand other languages. Noah chuckled. Does she teach you any of those languages? She can speak a bunch, Emily said proudly. Sometimes she teaches me magic words. Noah raised an eyebrow. Magic words? He asked, intrigued. Emily nodded vigorously. Yeah. And I can count to 100. Want to show me? Noah smiled. Maybe later, Emily replied, unbothered. Do you go to school? Noah asked, curious about how she was learning. Not yet, she answered. Mom teaches me letters and numbers. She looked proud of herself. I can count to 100. That's great, Noah said, smiling at the little girl who seemed so capable despite the circumstances. Did your mom ever say where she'd go if? Noah trailed off, unsure how to phrase his next question. If you got separated? Emily finished for him. She shook her head. No. She just said if we ever got separated, I should come to your house. That you'd take care of me. Did she talk about me before? Noah asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Emily nodded, her eyes sparkling. She said you drink a lot of coffee. Black coffee. Yuck. Noah chuckled at her candidness. Double Americano, no sugar, he murmured. That's it. Emily clapped her hands, delighted. How did you guess? Noah froze. That specific detail about his coffee preference triggered something in his mind, a memory just out of reach. It's just what I always order, he said cautiously, trying to dismiss the strange feeling creeping up on him. What else did she say about me? He asked, still unable to shake the feeling that there was something more to this story than he understood. That you used to play music, Emily said, lifting her hands as though she were playing an invisible piano. A pretty psalm with moon in the name. Claire de Lune, Noah murmured, the words slipping from his lips before he could stop them. Yes. Emily's eyes widened. How did you know? Noah couldn't explain it. It wasn't a memory of Claire, but it was his favorite piece to play years ago. The name Claire, and Claire de Lune. Could it be a coincidence? As lunch continued, Emily told Noah more about her life with her mom, stories of moving from place to place, of playing games, and of the strange, unshakable confidence her mother had in her ability to handle it all. Every detail only deepened the mystery, but also pulled Noah deeper into a world he wasn't sure he wanted to understand. The truth was, he had a daughter. And somehow, he had forgotten. The name Claire Donovan had begun to stir something in Noah, a sensation he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't a memory, not a concrete one, but a familiarity, like hearing a half-remembered song that you can't place, or a word on the tip of your tongue that refuses to be spoken. After lunch, Noah had to shift back into his work routine, though his personal life was in utter chaos. An important video conference was waiting. He couldn't postpone it, even with all the uncertainty hanging over him. Emily, I need to work for a few hours, he said, carefully choosing words he thought a 5-year-old might understand. Why? Her question came immediately, with the direct curiosity that was characteristic of her age. Because it's my job, Noah answered, his voice steady but evasive. I have an important meeting. Emily frowned, clearly unsatisfied with his vague response. But I wanted to show you my other drawings. Noah found himself in an unfamiliar situation. In his world, work always came first. He wasn't accustomed to anyone questioning his priorities, least of all a small child who barely reached his waist. How about we look at your drawings after dinner, he offered, surprised by his own willingness to bend the rules for her. Emily considered it for a moment, then brightened. Can we have pasta with tomato sauce? It's my favorite. Sure, Noah agreed, surprising himself once again with his flexibility. The afternoon dragged on, filled with endless meetings, emails, and reports. Between tasks, Noah checked in with Marcus, his head of security, to see if there were any new developments on Claire. As the day wore on, there were no significant breakthroughs. We found footage of her at the grocery store, Marcus reported toward the end of the day. She entered with Emily at 3:47 p.m. What happened next? Noah asked, his tone tense, bracing for something unsettling. By 4:22 p.m., the cameras show Claire looking agitated, searching for someone, presumably Emily, who's no longer with her, Marcus continued. Then what? She leaves the store, apparently looking for her daughter outside. But Marcus hesitated. What? She looks at something off camera. Noah felt a chill crawl up his spine. She saw someone. Seems like it, Marcus replied. We're trying to access other cameras to identify who or what she saw. Before Noah could respond, his phone rang. It was Diane. You need to see this, she said bluntly. Minutes later, Diane entered his office carrying a thick folder. We finally have something concrete about Claire Donovan. Or, more accurately, about Claire Dawson, Bradford, Taylor Reynolds, and half a dozen other names she's used over the past 6 years. Diane spread the documents across his desk, copies of IDs, driver's licenses, each showing the same woman but under different names. She changes her identity every 8 to 10 months. We've managed to trace some of these changes. Noah scrutinized the photos, trying to find some sign of recognition in the woman's face. Claire had a discreet, understated beauty, brown hair, delicate features, and intelligent eyes. But no matter how hard he focused, nothing triggered any memories. "Why would she do this?" he murmured, his voice heavy with confusion. "That's the million-dollar question," Diane responded, her tone serious. "People who live like this are usually running from something serious. Massive debts, criminal charges, or..." Noah began, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. "Or someone dangerous," Diane finished for him, her words chilling. "And here's the strangest part," she continued, flipping through more documents. Before she adopted this life of constant moving and false identities, Claire Donovan, her real name, from what we can verify, was a university linguistics professor. She published articles, had a promising career. Noah felt his heart drop as he processed the next part. Then about 6 years ago, she just vanished from academia. 6 years, Noah repeated, his voice distant. "Emily is 5. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications of that timing. Whatever had caused Claire to disappear happened just before Emily was conceived. Noah closed his eyes, feeling the weight of everything he was learning. He needed air. He needed time to think. "Keep looking," he ordered, standing up from his desk. "I want everything on Claire Donovan. Especially what happened 6 years ago." He left the office, aimlessly wandering through the mansion's long corridors, the silence pressing down on him. Somehow, his steps led him to the old music room, a space he hadn't visited in years. The grand piano sat in the corner, covered in a thin layer of dust. On impulse, Noah removed the cover and sat down at the bench, his hands hovering over the keys. He had not played in so long, but something about the room, the piano, pulled at him. He was so absorbed in the moment that he didn't notice Emily standing in the doorway until she spoke. "That's a giant piano," she said, her voice filled with awe. Noah almost stood up, embarrassed by the vulnerability of the moment, but something kept him rooted to the bench. "Yes, it's a grand piano," he replied, his voice surprisingly gentle. Emily stepped into the room, her eyes wide with wonder. She looked tiny compared to the massive instrument. "Are you going to play?" she asked, stepping closer, almost as though the piano might run away if it felt too threatened. "I'm not sure. It's been a long time," Noah said quietly. "Mom said you play beautiful music," Emily said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Noah smiled faintly, surprised by the way the mention of Claire felt. Emily ran a tiny finger across the keys, producing a random series of notes. "Will you play?" she asked again. There it was again. Claire knew things about him that she shouldn't have known unless they had shared a past. "Would you like me to try?" Noah found himself offering. Emily nodded eagerly, bouncing in place with excitement. Noah helped her onto the bench beside him, though she could barely see over the top of the keys. He hesitated, then played the first notes of Claire de Lune. His fingers were stiff from lack of practice, but slowly, muscle memory kicked in. The notes came, shaky at first, but then with more confidence. Emily watched in absolute awe, her mouth slightly open. "Wow! It sounds like fairy music," she whispered, mesmerized by the sound. Noah continued to play, letting the music fill the room. With each note, a forgotten emotion stirred within him, something not quite a memory, but an old feeling, long buried and now resurfacing. When he finished, the silence that followed felt almost sacred. Again, Emily requested, clapping her hands. Noah smiled, though it was a little sad. "Maybe later." He helped her off the bench and stood up. "How about that pasta I promised?" he asked, his tone light. "Pasta with tomato sauce." Emily reminded him, her eyes shining with excitement. That night, for the first time in years, Noah didn't eat alone in his office. Instead, He sat in the kitchen with Emily, who insisted on helping Sarah prepare dinner, which mostly involved standing on a stool and stirring the sauce under heavy supervision. As they ate, Emily chattered non-stop, telling stories about an imaginary friend named Mr. Buttons and asking every 2 minutes if the pasta was ready. It was a simple, domestic scene, one that had never belonged in his orderly, solitary life. And surprisingly, Noah found himself more at ease than he expected. During dinner, Emily suddenly fell silent. For the first time, Noah saw her without her usual bubbly energy. "How?" she asked quietly. "You are going to find Mom, aren't you?" Noah realized that despite all her apparent adaptability, Emily was still just a frightened 5-year-old, separated from the only constant in her life. "I'll do everything I can," he promised. "I promise." Emily studied his face for a moment, her eyes searching him. Then, to Noah's complete surprise, she held out her pinky finger. "Pinky promise?" she asked seriously. Noah hesitated for a second, then hooked his pinky with hers. "Pinky promise." Emily smiled and returned to her pasta, seemingly satisfied. After dinner, Noah helped Emily get ready for bed, a process that included 3 bedtime stories, checking under the bed and in the closet for monsters, plugging in a nightlight and leaving the door slightly open. When he finally returned to his office, the documents about Claire Donovan were still spread across his desk, photos, ID copies, fragments of a life he didn't fully understand. He picked up one of the photos, studying the woman's face again. Claire. The name echoed in his mind, stirring that same strange sensation. Familiarity without a specific recollection, like something just beyond his grasp. "Where are you?" he murmured to the photo. "And what happened between us?" The mansion was quiet around him. Somewhere upstairs, Emily slept soundly, clutching a teddy bear Sarah had found in a closet. And somewhere out there, the woman who knew his secrets, his preferences, his music, was still missing. Noah placed the photo back on the desk and leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow, he would resume the search. Tomorrow, maybe he would be one step closer to understanding how he had lost not just a woman, but 5 years of his own daughter's life. Maybe a part of himself too. 2 weeks had passed since Emily's arrival, and Claire's absence loomed large in the Hayes mansion. The search continued, but yielded no solid leads. Noah had expanded the team of investigators and offered a generous reward for information. Yet, Claire Donovan remained elusive. Emily, for her part, was adapting remarkably well to her new routine. Noah had hired a tutor to guide her education, as she was used to being homeschooled. Slowly, a new normal was emerging, but the unanswered questions still gnawed at Noah. If Claire had sent Emily to him, why hadn't she shown up herself? More importantly, how could he be the father of a 5-year-old child and not remember her mother? Sitting in his office, Noah stared at the computer screen, which displayed a file he had been avoiding for days. Diane had managed to secure access to his own medical records, something he had never bothered to look at before. Hayes. Noah looked up from his desk as Sarah, the housekeeper, appeared at the door, her expression tentative. "Emily's already asleep," she informed him softly. "She asked me to let you know she wants pancakes for breakfast tomorrow." Noah nodded, offering a faint smile. "Thanks, Sarah. You can head to bed now." Left alone again, Noah took a deep breath and turned back to the file on his computer screen. It was the medical report from 6 years ago. He skimmed through the pages until he found the main diagnosis: severe traumatic brain injury resulting from a car accident. The accident. Noah's mind tugged at the memory, faint, distant. His car had swerved off the road one rainy night, crashing into a tree. He remembered being hospitalized for a few weeks but had always chalked it up as a minor bump in his busy life, something he overcame without much thought. As he continued reading, he found more details that had been buried in his subconscious. Patient presents partial retrograde amnesia, primarily affecting memories from the 14 months prior to the accident. Cognitive function otherwise preserved. A cold chill ran down Noah's spine. Amnesia? No one had ever mentioned that to him. Or had they, and he had simply forgotten? His eyes flitted to the date of the accident, and after doing a quick calculation, he realized it aligned closely with the time Emily would have been conceived. The 14 months of missing memories could very well include his entire relationship with Claire. His fingers trembled as he read on. Patient was discharged after 3 weeks of hospitalization with a recommendation for neuropsychological follow-up to treat amnesia. Prognosis for memory recovery uncertain. Another detail caught his attention. During hospitalization, the patient was visited daily by family members. No other visitors were allowed at the request of the Hayes family. Noah closed his eyes, struggling to process the new information. Not only had he suffered an accident that wiped out over a year of his life, but his family had also controlled who could visit him during his recovery. Had Claire tried to see him? Had she been turned away by his family? Noah realized he was holding his breath. Slowly, he exhaled. He needed more answers. Grabbing his phone, he dialed Diane's number, despite the late hour. "I need you to find my neurologist from back then," he said urgently. "Dr. Morales," Diane responded, the professionalism in her voice sharp. "I'll arrange it." 2 nights later, Noah awoke with a start. Another dream, the third one since he'd learned about his amnesia. It was always the same scenario, him lying in a hospital bed, unable to move, while a female figure held his hand. He could feel the warmth of her fingers intertwined with his, hear her muffled sobs, but when he tried to focus on her face, it stayed blurry, like trying to look through frosted glass. He knew sleep wouldn't come again. He glanced at the clock, 3:17 a.m. He put on a robe and headed downstairs for a glass of water. As he passed Emily's room, he noticed a faint light spilling under her door. He approached cautiously and cracked the door open. Emily was sitting up in bed, clutching her teddy bear. Under the soft glow of the bedside lamp, her eyes were red and wet. "Emily." Noah stepped inside, his voice gentle. "What's wrong?" "I had a bad dream," she replied, her voice small, barely a whisper. "Mom was calling me, but I couldn't find her." Noah sat on the edge of the bed, feeling awkward. He didn't know exactly how to comfort her, not in a moment like this. "It was just a dream," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "You're safe now." Emily nodded, but she didn't let go of her teddy bear. "When are we going to find Mom?" The question hit Noah like a stone. It was so direct, so filled with longing. What could he say? That despite all his resources, he hadn't found any trace of Claire. That he was beginning to fear the worst. "We're doing everything we can," he replied, avoiding a promise he couldn't guarantee. Emily studied him with those big, wide eyes that seemed to see through his words. "Mom says when you're scared, you have to be braver than the fear," she said softly. Noah gave a slight smile, despite the heaviness in his chest. "Your mom sounds very wise." "She is," Emily said, her face brightening. "And strong, too. Once our car broke down on the highway, and she fixed it all by herself." "She fixed a car?" Noah asked, genuinely surprised. "Yeah," Emily said proudly. "She opened the front part and messed around with a bunch of things. It took a while, but then it worked." Noah was silent, absorbing this new piece of information. Emily's admiration for Claire was so pure, so full of pride. "Do you want me to stay until you fall asleep again?" Noah offered, feeling the weight of his fatherly responsibility settle over him. Emily nodded, settling back among the pillows. Noah stayed at her side, awkward but present. In a few minutes, Emily's breathing grew deep and steady as she drifted back to sleep. Even after Emily fell asleep, Noah remained by her side for a while. How could he have missed the first 5 years of his daughter's life? How could he have forgotten her mother? And what if he never got those memories back? What if he never remembered Claire? The next morning, Noah sat in the waiting room of a medical building downtown. He had managed to secure an appointment with his old neurologist, Dr. Morales, a middle-aged man with an academic air. "Mr. Hayes," Dr. Morales greeted him, leading him into the consultation room. "I was surprised you reached out. It's been 6 years since we last met." Noah took a seat. "Doctor, I recently found out I have a 5-year-old daughter," he said, the words heavy in his mouth. Dr. Morales raised an eyebrow but kept his professional demeanor. "I see. And this relates to your accident?" "Apparently so," Noah replied. "Her mother, Claire Donovan. I don't remember her at all, but everything suggests we had a relationship during that time." "I can't recall. Because of the amnesia?" Dr. Morales nodded, flipping through a folder on his desk. "Your retrograde amnesia affected about 14 months prior to the accident. It's entirely possible you had a significant relationship during that period." Noah's frustration bubbled over. "Why didn't anyone tell me? I lost over a year of my life, and no one informed me." Dr. Morales adjusted his glasses, choosing his words carefully. "Mr. Hayes, I informed your family about your condition. It was your father who decided how to handle the situation." "My father," Noah repeated bitterly. "Of course, it was him." Gerald Hayes, the doctor continued, the controlling patriarch of the family, insisted that additional stress could jeopardize your recovery. Noah's jaw tightened. "He insisted," he repeated, the bitterness evident in his voice. Dr. Morales didn't flinch. "You did come to see me a few times after your discharge, but after a few appointments, you chose to stop treatment. You said you felt fine and preferred to move on." Noah frowned, confused. "I don't remember making that decision." "That's common in amnesia cases," Dr. Morales explained, noticing Noah's confusion. "Some patients prefer not to explore lost memories, especially when they feel they can resume their lives without major issues." "And now I have a daughter," Noah said quietly. "And I don't remember her mother." Dr. Morales nodded. "Has anything changed recently? Are you having flashbacks or recurrent dreams?" Noah hesitated. "Dreams? A woman in the hospital holding my hand. I can't see her face." "That's a good sign," Dr. Morales said, his voice calm. "It means the memories are there, just inaccessible. We can try some therapeutic approaches to help you recover them." "Like what?" Noah asked, desperate for any solution. "Cognitive behavioral therapy, clinical hypnosis, visualization techniques," Dr. Morales suggested. The doctor paused, then added, "But I must warn you, recovering traumatic or emotionally charged memories can be a difficult process. It's worth trying, though." Noah felt a flicker of hope, the smallest ember in the chaos. He needed the truth, for Emily's sake, and his own. Over the next 2 weeks, Noah split his time between running his company, caring for Emily, and attending therapy sessions. 3 times a week, he met with Dr. Lien Chen, a neuropsychologist specializing in memory recovery, recommended by Dr. Morales. The sessions were intense, often frustrating. Visualization exercises, deep relaxation techniques, even clinical hypnosis, all in an attempt to access the 14 months of lost memories. "The brain protects itself," Dr. Chen explained during one particularly challenging session. "When it suffers trauma, like in your accident, it can block memories from the prior period as a defense mechanism." "But it's been 6 years," Noah argued. "Time isn't always the key factor," Dr. Chen replied. "Without the right stimuli, some memories can remain blocked indefinitely." In one session, Dr. Chen asked Noah to bring music he had listened to around the time of the accident. He chose Claire de Lune, the piece that inexplicably tied him to Claire. Lying on a comfortable couch in the silent office, Noah closed his eyes as the soft notes filled the room. Dr. Chen guided him through a relaxation exercise, asking him to visualize a hallway with multiple doors. Each door could hold a memory. "Just observe them," Dr. Chen instructed. "Don't force anything." Noah pictured the hallway, feeling deeply relaxed. The doors appeared in his mind, all closed. He walked mentally down the corridor until one door caught his attention. It was light blue, with a small crack in the middle. He approached and touched the handle. As soon as he turned it, the background music seemed to grow louder. The door opened. A coffee shop. The smell of freshly ground beans. He was sitting at a table near the window, working on his laptop. A woman's voice asking if he wanted more coffee. He looked up, but the image vanished before he could see her face. Noah opened his eyes, frustrated. "I was in a coffee shop," he told Dr. Chen. "Someone offered me coffee, but I couldn't see who it was." "That's progress," Dr. Chen encouraged him. "The images will become clearer over time. Don't force them." That night, the dream returned, more vivid than ever. Noah, in the hospital. The woman holding his hand. He could hear fragmented words, "Please let me see him, I love him, he needs to know." Then a male voice, familiar and commanding. "My son needs to recover without distractions. I'm asking you not to return." Noah woke in a panic, his head throbbing. The male voice was unmistakable. His father, Gerald Hayes, had driven someone away. Someone who wanted to see him in the hospital. Claire. His heart pounded as he tried to hold on to the fragments of the dream before they faded. He got up, dizzy, and walked to the window. Outside, the night was clear, the stars visible in the same sky he had stared at 6 years ago. Yet everything was different now. A shrill scream tore through his thoughts. "Mom!" Noah rushed down the hall to Emily's room. He found her sitting up in bed, her cheeks streaked with tears, still trapped in the nightmare. "Emily!" He called softly, sitting beside her. "It's me. You're safe." The girl blinked in confusion, but then her face cleared, and without warning, she threw herself into his arms, sobbing. "I dreamed Mom was scared," she hiccuped between tears. "She was running and calling my name, but I couldn't reach her." Noah held her awkwardly, feeling her small body tremble against him. "It was just a dream," he murmured, though part of him feared it was more than just a dream, if Claire really was running from something, or someone. "I want my mom," Emily sobbed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I know," Noah replied, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. How could he comfort a child whose pain mirrored his own? How could he help when he, too, was lost in a maze of forgotten memories? "I'll find her," he promised, though it was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. "We'll find her together." But as he rocked Emily back to sleep, Noah felt the weight of his own inadequacy. Noah didn't know how to be a father. He didn't know how to comfort a frightened child. He had no memories to guide him, no experiences to rely on. All he had were fragments, loose pieces of a puzzle whose final picture he couldn't imagine. A woman crying in a hospital. His father barring someone from seeing him. A DNA test confirming Emily was his daughter. Medical reports detailing 14 missing months of his life. Somewhere in that void of memory was Claire Donovan, the woman who knew the music he played, who had single-handedly raised their daughter for 5 years, and who, for reasons Noah couldn't yet understand, had needed to send Emily to him. Now, as he sat on Emily's bed, watching her small face, so much like his own, Noah made a silent vow. He would find Claire. He would recover his memories. He would learn the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Because for the first time in his adult life, something mattered more than work, success, or the expectations of the Hayes family. That little girl asleep in his home, with tears still drying on her cheeks. She deserved answers. And if that meant facing the blank space in his own memory, then that was exactly what he would do. Noah woke the next morning to the sound of laughter coming from downstairs. For a moment, he was disoriented. The Hayes mansion rarely heard laughter, especially not so early. Then he remembered. Emily. Over the last 3 weeks, his routine had changed more than it had in the previous 10 years. Now, he woke up earlier, had breakfast in the kitchen instead of his office, and knew all the names of the characters in his daughter's favorite cartoon. His daughter. The word still felt odd, but each day made it feel less surreal. He dressed quickly and went downstairs. In the kitchen, he found Emily perched on the counter, helping Sarah prepare what appeared to be pancake batter. Flour was dusted across her nose, and she smiled widely as she stirred the mixture. "Dad," she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement as she looked up at him without letting go of the spoon. Noah smiled, surprised by how natural it felt. "We're making pancakes with faces," Emily added. "Faces?" Noah asked, raising an eyebrow. "We can use blueberries for eyes and bananas for smiles," Emily explained eagerly, her eyes shining. "Like in the book we read yesterday." The book, along with several others, now occupied an entire shelf in his office. Bedtime stories had become a mandatory ritual before lights out. "Mr. Hayes," Sarah said with a smile, pouring the first pancake onto the griddle. Mr. Brent called. "He'll be here in an hour for the meeting." Noah nodded, though a part of him was still distracted by the family dynamic growing before him. Marcus was leading the search for Claire now, with a larger team of investigators and private detectives. They had a meeting scheduled to discuss updates. "Emily, do you mind staying with Mrs. Patel this morning?" he asked, referring to the tutor he had hired. "I have an important meeting." "About Mom?" Emily asked, her large eyes fixed on Noah's face. Noah hesitated, but only for a moment. He had made the decision not to hide the truth from her, not entirely, at least. "Yes, about your mom," Noah replied, trying to keep his tone even. Emily nodded, her expression suddenly serious. "I'm going to make a drawing for her while you talk. For when we find her," she added with the kind of unwavering optimism that sometimes left Noah speechless. After nearly a month of intensive searching, he was starting to fear the worst, but Emily was certain they would find Claire. "That's a great idea," Noah said, sitting down to share breakfast with her. An hour later, Noah was in his office, seated with Marcus, Brent, and 2 private detectives hired for the case. Diane Wells was also there, taking notes as they pored over the latest developments. "We managed to trace Claire Donovan's movements over the last 18 months, Marcus began, spreading photos and documents across the desk. "We've identified at least 6 different identities during that time." Noah frowned as he examined photos of Claire in various cities. "Why so many changes?" he asked. "This is where it gets interesting," said Jeff Lowery, a former police officer now working as a private investigator. "We spoke with neighbors, temporary co-workers, and landlords at the places she rented. They all say the same thing: she always seemed to be looking over her shoulder, like she was running from someone." Ana Ramirez, another detective, chimed in. "In Boston, a neighbor said Claire checked the locks twice and never accepted deliveries without first looking through the peephole. In Denver, a neighbor reported that she moved out in the middle of the night after seeing an unfamiliar car parked on the street for 2 days in a row." Noah felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The picture that was emerging was disturbing: Claire living in constant fear, always watchful, always ready to flee. "And Emily in the middle of all that," Noah muttered, his voice grim. "Yes," Anna replied. "And that's noteworthy. Despite all the moves, from what we've learned, Claire never neglected her daughter. Private tutors, libraries, museums, she made sure Emily had some form of proper education." Marcus took the lead again. "The first big question is who or what was she running from? And the second, why send Emily to you now?" Noah had no answers. His therapy sessions had produced only fragments, small details of a coffee shop, a laugh, the touch of a hand. Nothing substantial enough to solve the mystery of Claire Donovan. "There's more," Jeff said, hesitating slightly. "We found someone who had regular contact with Claire. A woman named Teresa Vega, in Portland," he continued. "She was Claire's neighbor for about 3 months a year ago." Noah leaned forward. "Go on." "Teresa said Claire mentioned being pursued by someone powerful. Someone who could buy anyone. Jeff paused before adding, she also said Claire feared they might hurt her daughter. Noah felt a chill run through him. That explains why she sent Emily to me if she believed I could protect her if something happened, he thought, but it didn't explain why Claire hadn't shown up herself, or why she had waited 5 years to do so. Or why she waited 5 years to send Emily, Diane pointed out. A heavy silence fell over the room as the possibility that Claire was in real danger became more and more likely. We need to intensify the search, Noah decided, standing up. Double the team. Increase the reward. Marcus nodded. I've already initiated advanced security protocols at the mansion. No one comes in or out without thorough checks. There's one last thing, Anna said, pulling an envelope from her briefcase. We found this in Seattle. Claire had worked at a bookstore there for a few weeks, under the name Claire Reynolds, about 2 months ago. The owner had kept this when Claire left abruptly. Anna slid a photograph across the desk. Noah picked it up, and his heart rate spiked. The photo showed a young woman, Claire, sitting on a park bench. Next to her was a small girl, unmistakably Emily, about 3 years old. They were both smiling at the camera. On the back of the photo was a date from 2 years ago and a single handwritten word, remember. Remember, Noah repeated, feeling a strange sensation of déjà vu. The photo seemed to be trying to tell him something, to awaken some buried memory. There's more, Anna continued. The bookstore owner mentioned that Claire regularly visited a particular cafe, Blue Note, almost every day. A cafe? Noah frowned. The mention of it sparked something in his mind. Where is it? It's less than a mile from here, Anna said. It's been closed for about 2 years, but at the time. At the time, Noah finished the thought. I used to go there. Double Americano, no sugar, Noah murmured to himself, realization flooding through him. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The connection between Claire, his past, and Emily was beginning to make more sense, but the questions only grew more complicated. What had happened to Claire, and why had she disappeared? And why had she sent Emily to him? The truth was still just out of reach, but Noah was determined to find it, no matter what. Everyone in the room stared at Noah, puzzled. Mr. Hayes? Marcus asked, his brow furrowed with confusion. Emily told me her mother said they met in a coffee shop where she worked, Noah said, his voice low but steady. He glanced down at the photo in his hands, forcing his mind to recall. The blue note was on my route between my old apartment and the office, he continued. I went there almost every morning. Diane, who had been taking notes, looked up, her expression shifting. So we have a solid connection, she concluded. You and Claire really did know each other. This isn't just a made-up story. Noah nodded slowly, still staring at the photo. Something about Claire's smile, the way she tilted her head in the picture, stirred a feeling of familiarity, but the full memory remained just out of reach, like a dream slipping away as he woke up. I guess we have a clearer direction now, Jeff Lowry, one of the private investigators, said as he leaned over the documents on the table. We'll track all of Claire's movements in Seattle during that period. Marcus added, if she revisited the blue note, she might have other connections there. The meeting continued for another hour, setting new parameters for the search. When everyone left, Noah remained seated in his office, still holding the photograph. Remember, he whispered aloud. What did Claire want him to remember? A gentle knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Emily entered, holding a colorful drawing in her hands. I'm done, she announced proudly, handing it over to him. Noah took the paper, which showed 3 stick figures. One was a small figure with brown hair, another was a taller one in a suit, and the third had long brown hair. Above them was a bright yellow sun and a big, round red heart surrounding them all. It's our family, Emily explained with a big smile. You, me, and Mom. When we're all together again. Noah felt an unexpected surge of emotion at the sight of the drawing. His throat tightened as he fought back the overwhelming feeling of love and responsibility. "It's very beautiful," he managed to say, blinking back tears. "Can I put it on the fridge?" Emily asked, already reaching for the drawing again. "Sarah says that's where families put important drawings." "Of course," Noah replied, watching as she skipped out of his office excitedly. Family. The word had never meant much to Noah. Growing up, it had meant stifling expectations, conditional approval. His father, Gerald Hayes, had built a corporate empire and expected Noah to follow that path exactly as planned. His mother, always in her husband's shadow, rarely intervened. The Hayes family meant success, not affection. But now, a 5-year-old girl was redefining that concept for him. The rest of the day passed with Noah balancing work and the new rituals he'd established with Emily. Lunch together, a walk in the garden, mid-afternoon sessions where he helped her with the educational exercises from her tutor, and finally, the best part of Emily's day, story time. Noah settled into the armchair beside her bed that evening, a children's book in his hands. "This one's about a bear who loses his family and finds them again," Emily said, snuggling into the pillows with her teddy bear. As Noah began reading, he noticed how Emily's eyes lit up with each twist in the story. Her joy was contagious. But when they finished, she caught him off guard with a question. "You know you've changed, right?" she asked, her voice small but thoughtful. Noah blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "When I got here, you didn't smile much. Now you smile more," Emily stated with the straightforward honesty of a child. Noah's heart skipped. Had it really been that noticeable? He didn't know how to reply. Was it true? Had he changed? "And you got mad at that man on the phone today," Emily continued, not missing a beat. "I've never heard you raise your voice before." The call she was referring to had been with one of his company's executives, who had questioned his frequent absences over the past few weeks. Noah had indeed lost his temper, something that was unusual for his typical cool and composed demeanor. "Sometimes people need to speak loudly to be heard," he said awkwardly, trying to offer a rational explanation for his behavior. Emily nodded, her face serious as she took in his words. "Mom says sometimes we have to roar like lions, even when we feel as small as mice." Noah smiled faintly, despite the heaviness in his chest. "Your mom sounds very wise." "She is," Emily replied, brightening a bit. "And strong, too. Once our car broke down on the highway, and she fixed it all by herself." "She fixed a car?" Noah asked, surprised. He had never imagined Claire in such a role. "Yeah," Emily said proudly. "She opened the front part and messed around with a bunch of things. It took a while, but then it worked." Noah fell silent, absorbing this new piece of information. Every detail Emily shared about Claire was adding another layer to the woman he was beginning to picture, a woman he hadn't yet remembered but had already shaped so much of his life. "Do you want me to stay until you fall asleep again?" Noah offered, his voice soft. Emily nodded and settled back into the pillows. "Okay." Noah stayed by her side, awkward yet present. Within a few minutes, Emily's breathing became deep and steady as she drifted back to sleep. Even after Emily fell asleep, Noah remained there for a while, watching her. How could he have missed the first 5 years of his daughter's life? How could he have forgotten her mother? And what if he never got those memories back? What if he never remembered Claire? The next morning, Noah sat in a discreet waiting room of a medical building downtown. He had secured an appointment with his old neurologist, Dr. Morales, a middle-aged man with an academic air. "Mr. Hayes," Dr. Morales greeted him warmly, leading him into the consultation room. "I was surprised you reached out. It's been 6 years since we last met." Noah took a seat, his mind focused. "Doctor, I recently found out I have a 5-year-old daughter," he said, the words heavy with meaning. Dr. Morales raised an eyebrow but remained professional. "I see. And this relates to your accident?" "Apparently so," Noah replied. Her mother, Claire Donovan. I don't remember her at all, but everything suggests we had a relationship during that period, Noah continued, his voice strained. I can't recall, because of the amnesia. Dr. Morales nodded, flipping through a folder on his desk. Your retrograde amnesia affected about 14 months prior to the accident. It's entirely possible you had a significant relationship during that time. Noah's frustration bubbled over. Why didn't anyone tell me? I lost over a year of my life, and no one informed me. Dr. Morales adjusted his glasses, choosing his words carefully. Mr. Hayes, I informed your family about your condition. It was your father who decided how to handle the situation. My father, Noah repeated bitterly. Of course, it was him. Gerald Hayes, the doctor continued, insisted that additional stress could jeopardize your recovery. Noah's jaw tightened. He insisted, he repeated, the bitterness evident in his voice. Dr. Morales didn't flinch. You did come to see me a few times after your discharge, but after a few appointments, you chose to stop treatment. You said you felt fine and preferred to move on. Noah frowned, confused. I don't remember making that decision. That's common in amnesia cases, Dr. Morales explained, noticing Noah's confusion. Some patients prefer not to explore lost memories, especially when they feel they can resume their lives without major issues. And now I have a daughter, Noah said quietly. And I don't remember her mother. Dr. Morales nodded. Has anything changed recently? Are you having flashbacks or recurrent dreams? Noah hesitated. Dreams? A woman in the hospital holding my hand. I can't see her face. That's a good sign, Dr. Morales said reassuringly. It means the memories are there, just inaccessible. We can try some therapeutic approaches to help you recover them. Like what? Noah asked, desperate for any solution. Cognitive behavioral therapy, clinical hypnosis, visualization techniques, Dr. Morales suggested. The doctor paused, then added, but I must warn you, recovering traumatic or emotionally charged memories can be a difficult process. It's worth trying, though. Noah felt a flicker of hope, the smallest ember in the chaos. He needed the truth, for Emily's sake, and his own. Over the next 2 weeks, Noah split his time between running his company, caring for Emily, and attending therapy sessions. 3 times a week, he met with Dr. Lien Chen, a neuropsychologist specializing in memory recovery, recommended by Dr. Morales. The sessions were intense, often frustrating. Visualization exercises, deep relaxation techniques, even clinical hypnosis, all in an attempt to access the 14 months of lost memories. The brain protects itself, Dr. Chen explained during one particularly challenging session. When it suffers trauma, like in your accident, it can block memories from the prior period as a defense mechanism. But it's been 6 years, Noah argued. Time isn't always the key factor, Dr. Chen replied. Without the right stimuli, some memories can remain blocked indefinitely. In one session, Dr. Chen asked Noah to bring music he had listened to around the time of the accident. He chose Claire de Lune, the piece that inexplicably tied him to Claire. Lying on a comfortable couch in the silent office, Noah closed his eyes as the soft notes filled the room. Dr. Chen guided him through a relaxation exercise, asking him to visualize a hallway with multiple doors. Each door could hold a memory. Just observe them, Dr. Chen instructed. Don't force anything. Noah pictured the hallway, feeling deeply relaxed. The doors appeared in his mind, all closed. He walked mentally down the corridor until one door caught his attention. It was light blue, with a small crack in the middle. He approached and touched the handle. As soon as he turned it, the background music seemed to grow louder. The door opened. A coffee shop. The smell of freshly ground beans. He was sitting at a table near the window, working on his laptop. A woman's voice asking if he wanted more coffee. He looked up, but the image vanished before he could see her face. Noah opened his eyes, frustrated. I was in a coffee shop, he told Dr. Chen. Someone offered me coffee, but I couldn't see who it was. That's progress, Dr. Chen encouraged him. The images will become clearer over time. Don't force them. That night, the dream returned, more vivid than ever. Noah, in the hospital. The woman holding his hand. He could hear fragmented words, "Please let me see him, I love him, he needs to know." Then a male voice, familiar and commanding. "My son needs to recover without distractions. I'm asking you not to return." Noah woke in a panic, his head throbbing. The male voice was unmistakable. His father, Gerald Hayes, had driven someone away. Someone who wanted to see him in the hospital. Claire. His heart pounded as he tried to hold on to the fragments of the dream before they faded. He got up, dizzy, and walked to the window. Outside, the night was clear, the stars visible in the same sky he had stared at 6 years ago. Yet everything was different now. A shrill scream tore through his thoughts. "Mom!" Noah rushed down the hall to Emily's room. He found her sitting up in bed, her cheeks streaked with tears, still trapped in the nightmare. "Emily?" He called softly, sitting beside her. "It's me. You're safe." The girl blinked in confusion, but then her face cleared, and without warning, she threw herself into his arms, sobbing. "I dreamed Mom was scared," she hiccuped between tears. "She was running and calling my name, but I couldn't reach her." Noah held her awkwardly, feeling her small body tremble against him. "It was just a dream," he murmured, though part of him feared it was more than just a dream, if Claire really was running from something, or someone. "I want my mom," Emily sobbed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I know," Noah replied, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. How could he comfort a child whose pain mirrored his own? How could he help when he, too, was lost in a maze of forgotten memories? "I'll find her," he promised, though it was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. "We'll find her together." But as he rocked Emily back to sleep, Noah felt the weight of his own inadequacy. His father was preoccupied with the fear of a public scandal, but Noah couldn't help but wonder if his own actions from 6 years ago could be far worse. "The DNA test is conclusive," Noah insisted, his voice steady but firm. "Emily is my biological daughter." "And what about the mother?" Caroline asked, her tone softer but still laced with skepticism. "Who is this Claire Donovan? What do we know about her?" Before Noah could answer, the living room door opened. Emily, her hair still damp from the morning, walked in, wearing a clean dress. Sarah must have brought her inside from the backyard. Emily froze in place at the sight of so many strangers. Silence settled over the room as 6 pairs of curious or hostile eyes fixed on the small figure at the door. "Emily," Noah called gently, extending his hand. "Come here." She hesitated for a moment, then walked across the room and stood beside him, her eyes warily scanning the adults. "This is Emily," Noah introduced, his voice firm but warm. "My daughter." Gerald studied the child with an analytical gaze. "She has the Hayes nose," he said reluctantly, as if giving in. "And the eyes," Eleanor added, her expression softening just slightly. Emily glanced from one adult to the next, clearly uncomfortable under their scrutiny. "Who are they?" she whispered to Noah, her voice small. "They're my family," Noah explained gently. "You're my family too." Gerald took a step forward, his tone shifting to the one he used in corporate meetings. "So you're Claire Donovan's daughter," he said, eyeing Emily carefully. "What did your mother tell you about us?" Emily shrank back, seeking the safety of Noah's side. "Nothing," she said quietly. "She only talked about my dad." "And what exactly did she say about your dad?" Gerald pressed, his voice cold, digging deeper. Noah intervened, his protective instincts kicking in. "That's enough, Gerald," he said firmly. Turning to Emily, he added, "Why don't you go with Sarah and get a snack? I need to talk to the family for a little while." The girl seemed relieved to leave the tense atmosphere behind. As soon as the door closed behind her, Noah turned back to face his relatives. "Let me make something very clear," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Emily is my daughter. This is not a scam, not a plot, not nonsense. And I won't allow you to treat her like it is," he added, his words cutting through the room. Gerald, ever the patriarch, remained unshaken. "Noah," he began, his voice stern, "you're not thinking straight. This woman, Claire, obviously took advantage of you." "Took advantage of the past you helped erase," Noah interrupted, his voice tight with emotion. "The accident. The amnesia." He let the words hang in the air, their weight sinking in. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flicking between her husband and son. Richard and Caroline exchanged uneasy glances, but Gerald remained unmoved. "We did what was best for you," Gerald said bluntly. "You were on a self-destructive path, involving yourself with unsuitable people. You were jeopardizing the future we built for you." "Unsuitable people," Noah repeated bitterly. "Like Claire." "Especially like her," Gerald confirmed with a nod, his voice dripping with disdain. "Coffee shop waitress. No prospects, no connections. Trying to latch onto the Hayes family." Noah felt his frustration boiling over. "You had no right," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained anger. "You had no right to interfere in my life, in Claire's life, in Emily's life. We had every right to protect this family's interests," Gerald countered, his voice cold and unyielding. "And that's exactly what we're doing now. This little girl can't just be admitted into the Hayes name without considering the legal, financial, and public image implications." Noah stood tall, looking each of them in the eye. His father, his passive mother, his arrogant brother, his uncertain sister, the family that had always dictated the terms of his life. "I'll say this only once," Noah declared, his voice steady and unyielding, the authority of a man who had taken control of his own life for the first time. "Emily is my daughter and will stay with me. I will keep searching for Claire. None of you will interfere in any way." Gerald's expression hardened. "Noah, you're not thinking clearly," he tried again, his voice tinged with frustration. "That girl only arrived a few weeks ago. We've been your family for 38 years. You're throwing all that away." "In all those years," Noah fired back, "when have you ever acted in my real interest? Not the Hayes name's interests." He looked directly at his father. "Emily may have arrived recently, but she's more genuine than anyone in this room." Eleanor stood, her face suddenly weary. "Gerald, perhaps we should give Noah some time. It's clear he has feelings for the child." Gerald stared at Noah for a long moment, his face a mask of displeasure, but finally, he spoke, his tone cold and final. "This isn't over, Noah. Once you get over this sentimentality, we'll talk again about practical measures to handle this situation." "There is no situation to handle," Noah replied firmly. "There's only a reality you need to accept." With that, the Hayes family left as efficiently as they had arrived. The sound of the front door closing behind them felt like a weight lifting from Noah's shoulders. He found Emily in the kitchen, eating a sandwich Sarah had made. When she saw him, she looked at him with those attentive, perceptive eyes, as if sensing the lingering tension in the air. "They didn't like me," she said plainly, her voice calm but matter-of-fact. It wasn't a question, more of a simple statement. Noah sat beside her, feeling the weight of her words. "They don't like much that's beyond their control," he answered honestly. "But it doesn't matter." "Why not?" Emily asked, her voice soft but curious. "Because I like you," Noah said, surprised at how easily the words came. "And nobody can change that." Emily smiled brightly, offering him half her sandwich. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more to Noah than any approval he'd ever sought from his family. In that moment, he knew he'd made the right decision. For the first time in his life, he'd chosen his own path, and there was no going back. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. Noah, a light sleeper these days, answered before the second ring. "Hayes," he said, his voice instantly alert. "We found her." Marcus Brent's voice crackled on the other end, tense but filled with excitement. "Claire Donovan. We're absolutely sure this time." Noah's heart raced. "Where?" "At a guest house called Safe Harbor, on the outskirts of Millhaven, about an hour's drive from here. Our local contact positively identified her from the photos." Noah didn't waste a second. "How long has she been there?" "At least 3 days. She's keeping a low profile. Rented the room for a week, paid in cash." Noah was already throwing on clothes, moving fast. "I'm heading there right now." "Sir, I advise caution," Marcus warned. "It might be better to wait until dawn. She could vanish again at any moment." Noah cut him off. "I'm not taking that risk. Get the car ready. Wake Emily. We leave in 20 minutes." As he hurriedly dressed, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation coursed through him. After almost 2 months of searching, they might finally find Claire. What would he say to her? How would it feel to finally meet the woman whose face he could only recall in fragmented dreams? How would he explain to her that he had lost all memory of their relationship? And most importantly, what would Claire explain to him? Why had she stayed hidden for 5 years? Why had she chosen this moment to send Emily to him? Noah climbed the stairs slowly and paused outside Emily's bedroom. He opened the door quietly and found her sleeping peacefully, clutching her teddy bear tightly. Tomorrow, perhaps, this fractured family could start reuniting. Or they might face revelations that would change everything once again. Gently closing the door, Noah made his way to his own room. On his bedside table, he set the photo, the one Anna had found of Claire and Emily smiling together in the park. "Remember," it said on the back. Tomorrow, maybe he would finally understand what that word meant. The next morning, they drove to Millhaven, hoping against hope that this time, their search would end. The place looked like the kind of place people on the move or with limited funds would stay. The parking lot had only 3 cars, all old and worn. Noah instructed one of the security guards who stayed in the vehicle, "Wait here. Marcus, you and Ryan stay alert but discreet. I don't want to scare her." Emily clung tightly to Noah's hand as they approached the reception door. The moment they stepped inside, the air felt heavier, filled with the stale scent of disuse. An older woman, still in a bathrobe, her hair unkempt and her eyes squinting from sleep, answered the door. "We need to see Claire Donovan," Noah said bluntly. "It's urgent." The woman frowned, clearly irritated at being disturbed. "At this hour?" "She's asleep, like any decent person should be." Before Noah could respond, Emily piped up, her voice small and anxious. "She's my mom." The woman's expression softened as she looked down at Emily. She studied the girl's face for a long moment, her gaze shifting from Emily to Noah. Slowly, she seemed to come to a realization. "Room 8, she said, her voice quiet now. "At the end of the hallway on the left." Noah nodded and squeezed Emily's hand, guiding her toward the hallway. The walk to the room felt endless. With every step, Emily's grip tightened. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in around them. When they stopped at the door marked with a number 8, Noah could hear the pounding of his heart in his ears, like the air pressure had shifted. "Should we knock?" Emily whispered, her voice tense with anticipation. Noah, his own nerves tightly wound, nodded but didn't speak. He raised his hand and knocked lightly 3 times. Silence. He knocked again, louder this time. Footsteps echoed from behind the door, and Emily held her breath. Then a voice Noah didn't consciously recognize, but one that sent a strange ripple of goosebumps across his skin, spoke through the door. "Who is it?" Before Noah could respond, Emily answered, her voice barely a whisper, "Mom, it's me." There was a long, breathless pause, followed by the unmistakable sound of a security chain being undone, a key turning in the lock. The door opened only a crack at first, and an eye appeared in the narrow gap. Claire's face was half hidden in the shadow, her expression one of shock and disbelief. As soon as she saw Emily, her breath caught in her throat. The door slammed shut for a brief moment before it was opened fully. Standing before them was Claire Donovan. Her brown hair was shorter than the photos Noah had seen, and her face was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She looked thinner than before, as if the weight of the past few years had taken a visible toll on her. But her eyes, those same eyes Noah had seen in the pictures, were wide, filled with emotion, and brimming with unshed tears. She struggled to hold back, her lips trembling as she spoke softly. "Emily," she whispered, almost as though the girl were a mirage. "Mom." Emily broke free from Noah's grip and threw herself into Claire's arms. Claire held her tightly, her eyes closing as the floodgates opened, tears finally flowing. Relief spread across Claire's face like someone breathing again after nearly drowning. For a moment, Noah simply stood there, watching them. The sight of them together stirred something deep within him. Then, as Claire held Emily, she lifted her eyes to meet Noah's gaze. The impact was immediate. As soon as their eyes locked, something burst in Noah's mind, a memory, not fully formed, but a flash so intense it nearly made him stagger. Laughter. A coffee cup spilling onto pants, an awkward apology. A napkin handed over with a laugh, as Claire said, "Don't worry, I hated these pants anyway." The same eyes, bright with humor and embarrassment. "Noah," Claire said, her voice pulling him back to the present. His name on her lips sounded strangely familiar, like a distant echo, something he had heard 1,000 times before but forgotten. "Claire," he answered, his voice shaky, unsure. The words felt odd coming out of his mouth, as if he both knew and didn't know her at the same time. Emily, still in her mother's arms, looked from one to the other expectantly. Claire, realizing they were still standing in the doorway, stepped back to let them in. "Come in," she said cautiously. The room they entered was small and impersonal. A single bed, a tiny table, an old wardrobe against the wall. A backpack sat open in the corner, and papers were scattered across the table, just enough evidence to show that Claire had, indeed, been living here. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emily asked, her voice full of concern as she studied her mother's face. "I am now," Claire replied, hugging Emily tightly again. Then, reluctantly, she turned to Noah. "How did you find me?" "I've had a team searching for you since the day Emily showed up," Noah said. His voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of frustration. "Why did you run? Why send Emily to me?" Claire hesitated for a long moment, her gaze flickering to Emily before returning to Noah. Noah understood immediately. "Emily," he said softly, "why don't you go with Marcus to the diner and get us some coffee? I bet they have pancakes at this hour." Emily looked uncertain, glancing between her parents. "But I just found Mom." "I'll be here when you get back," Claire promised, stroking Emily's hair. "I need to talk to your dad for a moment." As Emily left with Marcus, a heavy silence filled the room. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, her face suddenly drawn and exhausted. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked quietly, her voice laced with sadness. Noah hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. "No," he admitted, his voice thick. "Not completely. I had an accident 6 years ago. I lost some memories." "Some memories," Claire repeated with a humorless laugh. "That's what your father told me when I tried to visit you in the hospital. Noah lost some memories, but he's moving on. It's better for everyone if you don't complicate his recovery." The response was swift. "Impossible. Today. Board meeting." Noah didn't hesitate. "I cancelled the board meeting 10 minutes ago. I've already spoken to all the members. Today, 2 p.m. That morning, As Noah watched Claire and Emily discussing the decorations for the girls' bedroom, he felt a wave of normalcy wash over him. It was a precious moment, one that made his heart tighten. This was what he could have had for the last 6 years. "My family's coming this afternoon," Noah announced. "It's time to settle everything." Claire looked at him, her expression tense. "What exactly do you plan to settle?" Noah's voice was steady. "I've regained almost all my memories. I know what they did, and I'm not going to let them threaten our family anymore." "Our family?" Claire repeated, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Yes," Noah answered firmly. "Whatever happens between us, we are a family. And I'm going to make sure no one interferes again." At exactly 2 p.m., the luxurious cars pulled up in front of the house. Gerald and Eleanor Hayes exited the Bentley, followed by Richard, Caroline, and their spouses. Noah greeted them in the formal living room, Claire quietly at his side. "Well," Gerald began without preamble, his voice cold. "It seems the situation has escalated." His gaze slid to Claire, who met it evenly, unflinching. "Have a seat," Noah said calmly, keeping his posture strong. "What I have to say won't take long, but I want everyone to hear it." Noah remained standing, feeling the final missing fragment of his memory click into place, the day of the accident when he had intended to announce his engagement to the family. "I have recovered my memories," he declared. "All of them. I remember how we met, how we fell in love, how we decided to be together despite your opposition." Gerald barely blinked. "Romantic fantasies don't change facts, Noah." Noah's temper flared, but he kept his composure. "You had a serious accident, and you used my amnesia to rewrite my life." Noah interrupted. "To erase Claire from it." Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. "Noah, we did what was best." "Best?" Noah nearly laughed at the irony. "Threatening a pregnant woman? Burning down her apartment?" Eleanor turned pale, looking anxiously at her husband. Gerald didn't flinch. "You said you only persuaded the girl," Eleanor murmured, trying to steer the conversation into calmer waters. Gerald maintained his composure. "Everything was done to protect you and the company. That waitress was steering you off your path." "It wasn't just a whim," Claire interjected, her voice firm, full of resolve. "We were engaged. Planning to get married. When I realized I was pregnant, all I wanted was for Noah to know he was going to be a father." Caroline's face twisted in horror as she looked at her father. "You offered her money to vanish, even though she was carrying your grandchild." Richard defended his father. "A claim of pregnancy is the oldest trick in the book." Noah met his brother's gaze with cold fury. "Emily has my eyes. My nose. Even my laugh. You saw the DNA test. She's my daughter, and you stole 6 years of her life from me." Gerald turned to Claire, his voice dripping with disdain. "What do you want then? Money? Recognition?" Claire stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "I want you to stay away from my daughter. I want you to understand that you failed. Despite all your power, you couldn't keep Noah from his true family." Noah stood beside Claire, his resolve firm. "I'm here to set terms, not negotiate. Claire and Emily will stay with me. If there's any interference, any attempt to tear our family apart again, the consequences will be permanent." Gerald narrowed his eyes. "You're threatening your own father." "I'm promising to protect what matters," Noah said, his voice steady. "If that means giving up the presidency at Hayes Technologies, renouncing the Hayes name, so be it," he added. "Take it all. But Emily stays with me." Eleanor stood abruptly, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Noah, you're talking about abandoning your inheritance and your position, all for a..." "For my family," Noah finished firmly, his voice clear. "Something you should understand, but turned into nothing more than strategic alliances." The shock on everyone's face was evident. Never in his life had Noah challenged them so directly. How? You have obligations to this family and to the company. Gerald tried one last time, his voice full of disbelief. I won't let you destroy everything I've built. That's your choice, Dad, Noah said quietly. Accept reality or lose your heir. Caroline, the most sensitive of the family, stood with tears in her eyes. Noah, we're still your family. You can't just cut us off. You cut Claire and Emily out of my life without a second thought, Noah replied gently. But I'm not telling you to pick sides. I'm setting boundaries. Those who respect them are welcome. Gerald Hayes stood, his face flushed with restrained fury. This discussion is not over, Noah. Noah looked at Claire, his expression unyielding. I've learned who truly cares about me. The Hayes family left in a tense procession. Caroline lingered at the door, whispering, I'm so sorry, before following the others. When the door finally closed, Claire turned to Noah, her voice quiet but filled with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. Would you really do it? Give up everything? I already did, Noah said, his voice strong. The moment I chose to confront them. Claire gave him a small, knowing smile. They won't give up easily. I'm not asking them to, Noah replied. I'm just asking them to respect my choice. Noah reached out, touching Claire's cheek softly, his heart filled with a renewed sense of purpose. A choice I made once before, when I gave you that ring. Claire didn't pull away. Instead, she held his gaze, her eyes filled with something deeper than before. We're different people now. Yes, Noah replied, his voice full of emotion. But some things haven't changed. What I felt for you, what I still feel is real. Just then, Emily came running in, interrupting the moment. They left already? She asked, glancing around with curiosity. Noah knelt to her level, a smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, they're gone. Were they mad? Emily asked, sensing the shift in atmosphere. A little, Noah admitted, but that doesn't matter now. Are we staying here altogether? Emily asked eagerly, her innocent eyes filled with hope. Noah looked at Claire, letting her decide. Claire hesitated for only a moment before she answered. Yes, Emily. We're staying. For now, she added, and Noah smiled softly. It was a start. 3 months later, the beachfront house was nearly complete. Noah had impulsively bought the property, surprising Claire with his plans. It's not the Hayes mansion, he'd explained with a grin. But it's something new. Ours. One sunny afternoon, Noah was supervising the final touches of construction when Claire approached him. Emily was off in the distance, building a sandcastle with Caroline, surprisingly the first Hayes family member to reach out for reconciliation. She really does look like you when she smiles, Claire said, her voice softer now. And she has your determination, Noah replied, watching as Emily painstakingly rebuilt the castle. That castle's been rebuilt 3 times because it wasn't right. Claire laughed, her laughter ringing clear and light in the air. Noah's heart raced. Every one of her smiles still felt like a victory. I found something, Claire said, extending her closed hand while sorting the last of the boxes. Noah held out his palm, and Claire dropped a small metallic object into it, the ring. The same one he had chosen for her 6 years ago. I kept it all these years, Claire explained. Even while we were running. Even when I was furious. Noah stared at the ring, now completely familiar. He remembered every detail, choosing it, rehearsing his proposal, Claire's face when he had knelt down. Does this mean, Noah began, his voice thick with emotion, that I'm ready to try again? Claire smiled softly, her eyes searching his face. Not exactly like before. Noah nodded. We're different people now. Yes, Claire agreed. But some things haven't changed. Noah looked at the ring, then at Claire, and finally at Emily in the distance. 3 lives that had almost remained apart. In a gesture echoing a scene from 6 years ago, Noah knelt in the sand. "Claire Donovan," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "will you build a life with me again?" Claire, tears in her eyes but smiling firmly, held out her left hand. "Yes. A new life, with no secrets, no lost memories." Emily noticed what was happening and dashed toward her parents, throwing herself into their arms. The three of them tumbled onto the sand, laughing together, forming a perfect little circle as the sun began to set over the ocean, casting golden light on the house that would be their new beginning. Noah Hayes finally felt complete. No longer the Hayes heir. No longer the man with fragmented memories. Just Noah. Father to Emily. Partner to Claire. At last, in possession of his own memories, his own destiny. And that was more than enough.